Welcome back to a very special Mac Stories Unwind. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Vitici. Federico, it's a very special Unwind day today, isn't it?
It's a very special Unwind day. It's a very special day in general. I've been playing the new Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom on my Nintendo Switch.
Wow.
I literally just stopped 5 minutes ago to record this.
I am so jealous. I've been watching you all morning before we record this. You know, you got the box, you opened your package. First, I guess, explain to me, what exactly did you order? What did you get?
I got basically everything I could find. I got the collector's edition of Tears of the Kingdom. That's a giant box with, my understanding is, there's the game. I really haven't spent much time like inspecting, sort of unboxing the box, because I just needed to start playing the game. But in theory, it should have, I think, the game, some pins, I think, an art book, and a map, I want to say. Yeah, I think that's like, I'll let you know for sure later. But I also got a controller, like I got the Pro controller with the Tears of the Kingdom pattern on it. And I got,
that's a cool
and I got the
controller.
amiibo, the new Link amiibo. So my collection, I have a complete collection of Zelda amiibo figurines, and this is the latest entry, and the collection continues to be complete. So all of the Zelda amiibo ever released, I got them all, including the new one.
The controller is cool. It reminds me a little bit of the Super Smash one that they did that was black and white, but this is like mostly black with one of the handles is white, kind of like with a diagonal, and then there's gold printing on it with the Zelda patterns and everything.
So let me clarify: the collector's edition doesn't have a map. There's a poster. There's a poster, and there's a steel book case. So that's why it's heavy. There's a set of 4 pins inside. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I'm getting the digital download, and unlike you, I have to wait till midnight Eastern US time in order to play the game, and I don't plan to stay up till midnight. I will probably
just play tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll probably just get as much work as I can done today and try to quit
tomorrow.
And
That's a good idea.
Early as humanly possible. Yeah, so I can just focus on it all afternoon and evening. So
yeah. So hey, before we get into the show, we should tell people. You could have listened to this a day earlier with Unwind Plus.
That is true. That is true.
What is Unwind Plus, John?
Unwind Plus is a very special version of Mac Stories Unwind that's just for Club Mac Stories members. Everybody in the club gets to enjoy the show. Typically, it's a combination of media picks by the two of us, as well as, I don't know, just some silly cultural differences between the U.S. and Italy, and just a fun chat that we tend to have every week. Today's episode is different because Federico received Tears of the Kingdom a day earlier than most people, although I have seen it being delivered across Europe today, which was kind of interesting to me. But it's a club exclusive version of the show, and we also once a month do an AV Club pick, which is a media pick done by our Club Mac Stories Plus and Premier members in our subscriber Discord, where they pick something, we all enjoy it kind of together, like a book club basically, and then we do a live broadcast of that episode where we talk about it, and sometimes invite some of those club members to join us on stage. So that's a lot of fun too, and we have that available. And if you're in that higher tier of Club Mac Stories Plus or Premier, you get to participate both in the picking of that media as well as the live broadcast inside of our Discord community. So if you're interested in Mac Stories Unwind Plus, just go to plus.club to learn more. Mac Stories Unwind Plus comes out a day early in high bitrate audio and ad-free. All right, Federico, let's talk about this game.
Okay. All right. So what do you want to know? Because I think I want to try and keep it spoiler free as much as possible.
Yeah, we should do that. Yes, it's so early. Let's start at the very beginning because this game, I mean, the reports going into the release are that this is obviously set in the same world as Breath of the Wild, but that it is a much more vast and open world. I mean, which is hard to really, I think from my standpoint so far, is hard to imagine only because Breath of the Wild was such a big, expansive game to begin with. What's your impression of that?
Okay, so without sharing too many spoilers. So the intro of the game, I think it's one of the most surprising aspects of it immediately.
Really? Okay.
Yes. So like the very first 30 seconds of the game.
Wow.
So without getting too deep into like spoiler, like, because I really do believe that it's worth, to be surprised for those first 5 minutes at the beginning.
Sure.
It's all part of footage you may have seen before. So the intro, the beginning of the game, it's, I don't want to describe it, but it's all footage that you've seen from the very first teasers and trailers. It takes place immediately. Well, not immediately, but it takes place after Breath of the Wild. I'm just going to say that you're Link, you're in full champion gear, and then something happens immediately. And something that immediately stood out to me was the game starts. So you load up the game. You're not asked to create a save file or anything. You just see a black screen that says The Legend of Zelda, another black screen that says Tears of the Kingdom, and then it starts. And you see stuff, and after like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, you're immediately controlling Link. Like right away, like immediately controlling Link.
Because if I remember right, Breath of the Wild's intro was a lot longer than that.
I seem to remember that it was a bit more convoluted than that. And like it I think there was something there. But the difference, so something immediately happens. Again, this is the footage you may have seen before. And I noticed that Tears of the Kingdom wants to establish a lore, like a backstory. It immediately feels more intricate in a good way than Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild, the first 10 minutes of the game were all about like, okay, you're Link, you're waking up from this deep slumber in a cave, in your, you're wearing pants basically, and you walk out, you learn how to climb, you walk out, and you are on this cliff, and you see the Great Plateau, and title screen, you see the logo. That's the beginning of the game. So he wants to capture your attention and he wants to excite you by showing you this great expanse in front of you, right?
Right.
Tears of the Kingdom introduces characters right away, and it starts and it's from the get-go. You can tell it's a follow-up to Breath of the Wild, to the events of Breath of the Wild. But you play for a few solid minutes before you see the title screen. And in fact, you see the title screen, and when you first jump off a sky island, when you first sort of dive from a sky island, that's when like it slows down and the Tears of the Kingdom logo appears. And so right away, there's a few differences there. Compared to Breath of the Wild, there's a lot more story and a lot more callbacks in the first 10 minutes in Tears of the Kingdom. There's a lot of voice acting immediately in the intro of Tears of the Kingdom.
Okay, that's unusual.
So far, I can tell you, Link doesn't talk. So Link is still silent at the moment. But yes, so that's the immediate differences. Breath of the Wild wanted to sort of to have that wow effect with the panel shot of the Great Plateau. Here, you start, and there's a couple of events that take place, and then you have that moment, right? You have that moment when you see the horizon in front of you with all the sky islands, and then you look down, you can see, Hyrule, you can see the Earth basically down, and then you skydive, and that's when you see the logo. So the fact that in the first 10 minutes, there's already a lot more story. Music, this is one of the things I sort of had a feeling from the trailers, and I can confirm now, there's a lot more music in this game, which I'm really...
There wasn't that much.
There wasn't that much. It was very like sort of ambient style. Here you also have that, like there are moments of quiet and total silence, but there's a lot more sound effects and little pieces of orchestrated music here and there. But also, the game immediately digs deep into the lore of Hyrule And, as you may have been putting together from the trailers, this ancient civilization of the Zonai.
Right.
And then, yes, so this game has an equivalent of the Great Plateau from Breath of the Wild. This one is called the Great Sky Island. And the Great Sky Island essentially serves as it's the sky equivalent of the Great Plateau.
Got it. That's your starting point and kind
it's
of
a starting
almost
point, and
tutorial level almost.
Yes, and it's very sort of like the thing I notice is that it's very hands-off approach. Sure, there's a path, and sure, the game gives you immediately a couple of objectives that you need to follow.
Right.
There's there's basically a few quests immediately that you need to complete, but and this is one of the things I noticed. It immediately puts you in control in a way that Breath of the Wild, it gave you that sense of freedom by being physically large.
Right.
Tears of the Kingdom, it's large, it's expansive, but it's also the freedom of the mechanics. And that I think is something that stood out in this first 3 hours that I spent.
Right, because Breath of the Wild kind of fenced you in right at the very beginning on the Great Plateau, and you couldn't get off. Couldn't get off, obviously, until you got the paraglider and stuff like that.
And something that I did immediately today, and I sent you, both you and Mike, a screenshot of what I did. To give you the context, like the Great Sky Island, it seems huge, especially because it's also multi-layered. There's a lot of like upper and lower surfaces that are connected with each other by floating platforms or these rail systems. And one of these rail systems, so I thought, I saw this very long floating rail that connected two mini islands on the Great Sky Island. And I thought, well, what if I, take my time and very slowly and very carefully walk on this rail? And
because these are the rails. I think in the trailer you see these. This is where Link creates like a little rail car, and
you're supposed ride on. You're supposed to create a rail car, but I forgot.
Right, and you walked it, which I saw. I saw the screenshot you said. It's incredibly narrow.
It's incredibly narrow, and I walked very carefully. And I thought I was so smart because I was able to reach the lower part of this Great Sky Island before I was supposed to. And in fact, I couldn't get any further because I was lacking an ability. And then I needed to, I was stuck on the lower island. And
you had to walk back.
And I had to walk my way back on the rail. But this is just an example of like, you see it, you can go there, you can do it. It's just that compared to Breath of the Wild, it feels like the game, there are on-screen tutorials, but the game takes for granted, I think, from the get-go that you are already familiar with the vocabulary of Breath of the Wild. Right? And so that's why I was able to be like, sure, I'm just going to climb on this pole and walk on the rail and go down. And then I realized, maybe I got a bundle of arrows because I defeated this enemy, but now I'm stuck here. And so I need to walk back.
Right. It was a pretty long distance, it looked like, too. I mean, just for context, Federico's been very kind and has not tortured Mike and I too much, but it is torture to watch Federico sending screenshots and talking about this game. I mean, it's from all accounts, from the reviews we saw this morning as we record this, it's getting practically, 10 out of 10 and 5 out of 5s across the board from most of the major publications out there.
Yeah. And obviously I don't have the context of, I've seen, for example, Vux, the video game website, and they posted a screenshot that they already logged 110 hours in Tears of the Kingdom. So my context is just these are my first impressions, right? I've been able to play the game for 3 hours.
So you've been up on the Great Sky Island. Where?
So I'm on the Great Sky Island, and the thing that's really exciting is that the two abilities that Nintendo has been showing off everywhere. So the Ultra Hand and the Fuse ability, you basically get both of them within the first hour or 90 minutes of the game.
Oh,
You,
that's great. That's good to hear. Because
yeah,
I'm really excited to try those.
you get those right away, and especially since when you get the ultra. So the ultra hand and fuse are two separate abilities. What you should know is that the UI is largely the same of Breath of the Wild. So for example, you hold down the L shoulder button to access your ability wheel, and from there you can select an ability. The inventory looks the same. The sound effects are largely the same. There are some quality of life improvements here and there. For example, one of the things I love is that if you open a chest and there's a weapon inside, but you don't have any more slots for melee weapons, you can drop one immediately without exit.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yes.
That drives me crazy.
Yeah, because before you needed to dismiss the chest menu and then drop a weapon. Yeah, now you can do it all from while the chest overlay is being shown. So there's a bunch of these quality of life enhancements. But so Ultra Hand is the ability that lets you attach items with other items, and Fuse is the ability that lets you attach objects and sort of items to weapons. This is the difference. So fusing is for
Fuse is about weapons.
Fuse is about weapons or shields. So you can fuse an object to a melee weapon or a shield. You can also
and to an arrow, right? I mean,
well, that's not fuse.
In the trailer they
but
showed
that's
that,
not
right?
fuse. So fuse is just for like the arrows. You can combine arrows with objects, but you don't do it via fuse. You do it so when you're aiming with your bow, you press the up arrow on the directional pad, and from there you can choose any of your resources. So, for example, you can immediately attach like a fire fruit to an arrow, and that becomes a fire arrow, or you can attach a blue choo-choo jelly to an arrow, and that becomes like a water arrow, and so forth. That's not fuse. Fuse is like there's a rock, and you can take the rock, attach it to a sword, and now it becomes a hammer. Like that's the kind of thing you can do. Ultra Hand is for attaching, and in both cases, like you're still using this weird like green goo material that is not yet explained. And again, I don't want to get into the details of how you get the Ultra Hand and these abilities. But with Ultra Hand, you can attach essentially anything you want together. So early examples include, for example, there's a lake in front of you, and you need to cross the lake. Well, you can chop down some trees, get some logs, attach them together. So now you have a platform, and then you can take a cloth and use it as a sailing cloth and attach it to what essentially becomes a raft, and so you can cross the lake. Because now you have a little boat for yourself. And one of the things that, and I sent you screenshots for this. One of the things that I did immediately was like, okay, so I want to make a boat with a very high sort of what's the name like
mast
with a very high mast. Turns out though that I made it too high, so the boat couldn't balance itself, and when I placed it in the water, it flipped over. So I was like, okay, so physics are involved here. Of course, being the a follow up to Breath of the Wild. So I took more logs and I balanced it out in the back of the boat. So now even though the mast was high, the back of the boat was heavy. So I was able to make a very high mast and cross the lake with that fancy boat that I made for myself.
So let me ask you this. Could you have taken your boat apart and kind of reassembled it?
You can always do that. It's very nicely done. So I was concerned that this was going to be tricky because some of the previews mentioned how the controls were difficult. I can tell you, I don't think it's because I'm a gamer, like I'm a pro gamer. Like I think the controls are introduced very naturally to you, and the abilities are introduced. It's a Nintendo game, so they introduce things progressively and very elegantly. At any point, you can. So the way the Ultra Hand works, you attach two objects together. When you grab it, if you just grab it, you move everything all at once. But because they are attached by the green goo material.
Right.
But at any point, you can select any of the individual components of your creation, and you can shake the right stick, the right thumbstick, to detach that particular selected objects from the entire creation.
All right, I see. So if you wanted to, you could have selected your mast,
Yes, that's
shaken the
exactly.
stick,
Yep.
taken it off, and maybe tried to find a way to
Yes.
shorten your mast or
Yes,
something.
that's exactly
Okay.
what I could have done. Yeah. So you can either move everything together all at once, or you can select a specific part, shake the stick. That basically says, I think, what does it say? Detach or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And it detaches, and then you can tweak it, and you can move with the Ultra Hand. You can move objects. You can move objects near you or further away from you, and you can rotate them.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like some of the controls they had for, the magnetic
Yep. Yep.
control and the stasis and all those other ones. Yeah, interesting. And I think it's good to hear that the controls haven't really bothered you too much, because I did kind of wonder with the previews that people got. It was pretty clear from what was written that those people were just kind of dropped in the middle of a part of the game, and probably didn't have the benefit of the progressive, revealing of how the different controls work. So that's always a little hard to do.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I wasn't really confused by how the controls worked.
All right, Federico, this is really interesting to me, but I want to know kind of, where are you? You've been playing this for what you said, like a couple of hours at this point?
Yeah, up almost 3 hours, I think. So
Okay.
I'm still on the Great Sky Island, and the beautiful part of this is that as soon as you start getting abilities,
Uh-huh.
more parts of the Sky Island, of the Great Sky Island, become accessible to you.
Okay.
And I've reached a point where I can now craft objects with Zonai devices. The Zonai devices being like these mechanical parts, like fans or engines that are battery
Hmm.
powered. So you need to carry around. You have this belt accessory that is a Zonai energy cell, and
Okay.
now you can combine sort of the more natural elements like pieces of wood or rocks or logs with
Yeah.
Zonai devices. So you can put together like a raft that is more efficient because it's got essentially like a mechanical fan instead of
Right.
using like a sailcloth, for example. The other thing I noticed is that you can, and it's quite a sight really, you can see other sky islands all around
Uh-huh.
you, and you can see down on Hyrule. Like you can make out that there are things on Hyrule by looking down, and it's quite remarkable to just look around and see all the things around you. I will also say that, and a couple of things. Maybe these are slightly. I mean, these are the smallest spoilers. The
Okay.
Koroks are back.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, the Koroks are back, and there are shrines on the Great Sky Island. So
Oh, all right.
one
All
of
right.
the thing that I'm doing now is trying to complete this first 3 shrines, which I can also tell you, this mechanic of fusing items and fusing objects to your weapons immediately opens up so many possibilities and
Oh, I imagine. Yeah.
makes the game feel like Breath of the Wild was missing an entire layer. Because once again, I want to reiterate how I feel so far. 3 hours in, it feels like I'm playing Breath of the Wild, but with a brand new sort of layer of gameplay on top of it that you can ignore. I
Yeah.
mean, you can totally ignore all of this, right? You can pick up a stick
Sure.
and beat enemies with a stick, and the enemy drops up a sword. You can take the sword and just use that until it breaks. But
Right.
it's just so natural, and it flows so well with the rest of the game to start fusing things together.
It feels like something that they did maybe take out of, maybe they planned for. And I think there have been some discussions with the developers about some of these ideas that are in this game are ideas that they had with the original Breath of the Wild, because I've always felt like collecting a lot of the objects in Breath of the Wild was, I wouldn't call it useless, but I collected an awful lot of stuff that I never really used. Sure, you would make your meals to survive the cold or whatever it happens to be, but I always ended up with a bunch of stuff that I wasn't really sure what to do with.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a couple more
Okay.
specific questions. How does the map work? Does it work largely the same? Is it
Oh,
revealed in pieces or?
so far it's been revealed to me in pieces. I just see a map for the Great Sky Island. and nothing else.
Okay, and I assume that there's probably some sort of fast travel as well
I have
between
no idea.
areas.
I don't think
But
so.
have
I haven't.
no, you
Yeah,
haven't probably run into
no.
because before it was like the towers and things that you
Well,
could.
no, there's none of that so far in the
Yeah.
first area. No, you have a new device. It's called the
Uh-huh.
Pura Pad. It's like a Nintendo Switch
Okay.
with a camera, and that's what you use to mark waypoints on the map. For example, I
Okay.
set waypoints for the shrines that I could see on the Great Sky Island, and yeah, that's what I've been using to navigate. But
Do you still have a Sheikah slate?
well, it's basically a new version of that. It's
I
the
see.
Pura Pad.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah,
Got it. Makes sense. All right. Wow. All right. Well, I'm really looking forward to this. I
yeah.
can't wait. How does it look? How does it look visually to you? Do you
It
notice any differences?
it looks, I would say, slightly better than Breath of the Wild. It looks more
Hmm.
looks the geometries of like forests and like hills around you and buildings and ruins around you looks slightly more complex than Breath of the Wild, and the lighting effects are also more complex. And based on what I've seen so far, great variety of colors and sort of moods and vibes. And yeah,
How does it play in terms of how smooth is it? Like, is it maintain
rock
frame
solid
rates?
30 seconds, 30 frames per second. Yeah, I haven't had
Yeah.
any performance issues so far. And my general takeaway, because we cannot go any longer than 30 minutes on this show, my general takeaway so far is that this feeling that I have, if it's correct, if you're into Zelda lore and backstory, this game will
Uh-huh.
satisfy you.
Nice. Nice.
Playing this game, it immediately feels like Breath of the Wild with a brand new layer on
Right.
top of it. That once you try it, I think if you went back to Breath of the Wild, it would feel half empty,
Like it's missing
like
those
it's missing,
things, right?
those things because they feel so obvious. Like, yeah, sure, like I should be able to craft whatever I want in this world that
Right.
lets me do whatever I want.
Right. Right. That makes sense. I'm so excited for this. Well, thanks so much, Federico, for sharing your first impressions with everybody. You can find the two of us over at macstories.net. We're on Mastodon. You can go visit vitici.macstories.net to follow Federico, or johnvorhees.macstories.net to follow me. We're also on Instagram, where Federico is at Vitici. That's VITICCI, and I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.